As you saw in the first 3 videos, my buddy Rick bagged a nice sow at the end of our weekend hunt, and we field dressed it before bringing it back to my house for further processing. Rick began by cutting the skin around the hocks. The hock joints on the hind legs are really strong and are a great place to insert the gambrel hooks to hang the wild game for skinning and processing. However, Rick wanted to remove some of the skin around the hocks first so the gambrel wouldn't interfere with his skinning process.
So we have the luxury of time, so I'm going to go ahead and get ahead of the curve here. As you can see, I cut always out like this, because if I cut like this, hair goes in the meat, and that's really hard to get rid of.
Now that Rick had finished pulling the skin down a little bit, he punctured the hock right above the joint so that he could put it on the gambrel hooks and hoist it up for further processing. So how much does it weigh?
90.
90 pounds field dressed. You add another 25 pounds, 30 pounds. Based on the field dressed weight, we estimated that the hog was around 120 pounds on the hoof. It's a nice size sow.
All right, so we'll just continue to...
And I noticed that you're using a smaller knife.
This is an old timer that I like, that it's good for skinning. It's not so big. It's very sharp. So in Cuba back in the day, and I don't know if it's still like this, but what they do is they go out and they steal cows to feed their families. And so what they would tell me was that they would stick an air hose. So before we even started the cut, before it was even gutted, they would take a cow and they would put it, they would make an incision somewhere, and they would put an air hose here and they would blow it up with air, and it would detach all this skin from the meat.
Yep.
And then they would cut it, and then it would just come right off.
Right.
I have never done that. I might do it someday though.
I've actually tried it on a rabbit, and it seemed to work pretty well, but I've never tried it on a bigger animal like this. So someday we're gonna have to try that out.
Maybe we'll have to try it.
Okay.
We'll do a video on that.
There you go. But this is just a normal thing. You want to go slow. You want to make sure that you pull the skin away and just cut away from the muscle. You don't want to try and cut into the muscle. But this process takes, a little bit of time.
It takes a while, so
you need to make sure that you've got time set aside for it, and also that you've got your freezer set up. I've got a chest freezer over there, and we'll put the pieces in when we're done. We're going to try and quarter this out, meaning we're going to try and separate it into 4 pieces. The 2 ham hocks, or the 2 legs, and the 2 front legs. There will be some additional pieces like tenderloins inside, those things you see there that are lining the interior of this sow, and also the back strap, which would be on the opposite side, running down either side of the spine.
I think it's important to know that you can't get more organic than one of these.
So right now you're cutting around the tail, trying to get that tailbone to separate along with the skin. So right here you can see where he cut through the joint on the tailbone, and that part of the tail then went with the rest of the skin. We've got a bucket underneath to catch any liquids and also any pieces that we are not going to be using. It's a good idea to have that set up and ready to go. We also have the hose ready with some cold water in case we need to douse things down.
So this is a mostly acorn fed hog, and you can see that it's got a lot of fat on it. I hunt in a different area, South Texas, where there's not that much acorns, and they are not this fat.
Again, you'll notice that Rick is cutting up underneath the skin to avoid cutting down and putting hairs into the meat. Once he cuts through that skin, then he can of course cut down once he's gotten inside, but you got to be really careful when you're trying to carve these things up that you make sure that you're mindful of those types of things, because just a little bit of extra effort can prevent you from having some heartache down the road. And I notice you're cutting it a little bit higher there. And that, I assume, is because we are not going to be using that part of the leg. We're going to cut it right there.
We're going to take it right here.
And that'll be, you know, all of this will be discarded. That part that's higher than that joint will be part of the quarter.
So I go from the center of the hoof, and then I go down that hairline. You can go up to there.
After Rick cut the skin from the other front leg, he continued removing the skin from the back of the sow. This process takes time, and you should go slowly to minimize the chance of cutting into the meat. You will also notice that Rick pulled the skin down by hand where he could. At the end of this process, all of the skin should be down around the neck of the animal, allowing for easy removal of the head.
The next step is to take off the front legs at the joint where we're not going to be using the piece at the bottom. So Rick just took off one, and now we're going to take off the other one.
And some guys are really good at it. I'm not. So I have to kind of like find my way around. If you don't have a saw, this is what you have to do.
It just takes a little bit of fiddling around to try and find where that joint is.
Find that joint, and then it'll come right off. If you find the joint, it'll come right off. And the tendon.
There it is. Just keep hacking away at it till you get to that point.
It'll come right off.
And then it'll come right off. There we go. Now we'll go ahead and take off those two front legs, and those two pieces will go in this container that I've got ready. So you'll see Rick start to go around the shoulder blade here. He'll try to find where that shoulder blade meets up on the back, and he'll cut around it. Again, you want to go slowly so that you make sure that you don't butcher the meat, and pulling away at the membrane will allow you to get one leg in one piece, just like that. And then he'll do the other leg the same way. Work smarter, not harder.
This is nice.
Again, just following that muscle all the way up to where it connects on the back. You have an audience, Rick. All right, so the second leg is off and in our container.
Rick then proceeded to cut off the meat around the belly of the hog. This is known as pork skirt steak and can be used for grilling, stir-frying, or making stews.
He's going to cut off the other piece of meat on the other side that is right next to the rib cage. And that is good for fajitas or chili.
Chili. Good chili.
Rick then proceeded to take off as much of the meat as he could around the belly and between the rear legs and the rib cage, since he was not intending to keep the ribs for this particular hog.
You can see as you start to cut, you can start to see the anatomy, and you just want to kind of work with that anatomy to the best of your abilities to cut off the pieces of meat that you can. Now Rick's going to cut out the tenderloins. Again, these are the muscles that are inside along the back, but on the inside of the animal, and they're very tender. These are some of the most prized pieces of meat of any game animal, and also of domestic cattle. and that's where they're located. There's one on each side, so that's one right there, one tenderloin, and now for the other. You just cut along that spinal column very carefully and go up. You'll see where it joins, and you can cut it out very easily. As long as you're slow and methodical, shouldn't be an issue at all. All right, there's the second tenderloin.
Survivor dog.
Flocka and Buddy were both strays when I found them, and they were used to fending for themselves out there in nature, and so they are definitely survivors. Some neck meat, also good for stews.
Good for stew. Good for something. Nothing goes to waste.
Now Rick's going to try and get the back straps, which are like the tenderloins, but on the opposite side. They're on the back. Also very tender cuts of meat. So you just go down the spine on either side and you'll find both of those back straps. It's hard to see with all that fat. All right, there's one back strap right there. Now Rick's gonna get that second back strap off. Again, just following the spine all the way down and then cutting off healthy piece over toward the what will be the bottom side of the ribs to try and get that off in one piece. That's the challenge. A lot of people will take extra special effort to prepare that piece of meat, either more delicately with butter and seasoning, or some people actually chicken fry the back straps and tenderloins. All right, there's the second back strap.
Normally we don't do this, but I'm going to go ahead and do this one.
Rick then took the meat off the rib cage of the sow. Again, depending on how you intend to use the cuts, some people saw the ribs off the backbone with the meat still on. But because Rick primarily wanted meat for stewing, he decided to cut the meat off the bone and avoid the hassle of using a hacksaw.
Now we're going to take off the hindquarters one at a time. Again, just following the anatomy. There's also a ball joint in there that Rick's going to have to find when he gets ready to pull one of the legs off. It's a little bit difficult to find, but with a little effort and patience, you should be able to find it as well.
The pelvis.
Exactly. So you can see Rick's got that out of the ball joint. Now it's just a matter of separating the muscle tissue, and then the leg should come free. Just like that.
What is that?
That's Buddy
Is that Buddy?
and Flocka howling at the coyotes.
when your dog is parked home on the ranch.
Yeah. And Rick is going to cut off the joint where the leg is because we don't want that hoof. So he'll find the joint there again and cut off those the feet.
Rick used the same procedure to remove the hoof from the second hind quarter, and when he was done, we ended up with a nice container full of meat ready for the freezer. There you go. We had a nice hunting weekend here at Perez Oso Ranch with my buddy Rick Delgado. He shot a nice sow, got her off of my property, so I really appreciate him coming out and helping me out with that. If you enjoyed this video, I hope you'll give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing to my YouTube channel at Rancher Mike. And until next time, take care. If you enjoyed this video, please give a thumbs up below. You can also check out one of my other videos here and stay up to date by subscribing to my YouTube channel right here. Until next time, I'll see you on the ranch.